After the events of Age of Ultron, as everything has passed in the last 2 years, as Ben himself becomes a teenager in the age of 15, where he's in high school, and just like in the original, he begins to grow up slightly after that event, as Ben is becoming much more aware how powerful he truly is with the watch, but most importantly, how he impacts the world with his abilities. And not only that, his cousin seems to grow as much as he does, as she becoming a pure prodigy on using her magic, using her new identity as Lucky does to help around with Ben. And of course, Kevin being locked up in a plumber, but unlike the government, as Kevin is enforced as Kevin is actively choosing to help the plumbers and not forcibly, because the plumber gave an ultimatum that they could cut his charges down if he helps, as Kevin accepts that because that he is back to normal and not a mutated state, as Kevin agrees to Max and Texas to help around, but also be a very look guy on him, as Kevin is beginning to do some tests and not to mention to get control of his powers, because Kevin doesn't want to go back to his mutated state and ultimately wants to go back to having a kid life that he seems to have thrown that away a year ago, and right now is enjoying as his normal stuff. But after that, but besides from the Tennyson family and his plus Kevin and Jack tries as the Avengers, it seems to still on trying to help the world, as as Captain America is has built a new next generation of Avengers using Wonder Vision Falcon as and a new addition that, unlike in the timeline, Quicksilver, known as PH, so as the help with Black Widow by himself, as they try to basically help the world wherever they can. But unfortunately, one incident that they try to battle against Crossbone leads to a huge disaster, as Wanda, her power is becoming a bit of unstable. But even though she has a brother, but Wanda's tremendous power is quite powerful and quite shakes the bit that she accidentally had a whole building blow up, forcing Captain America and his team to save as many people from Wanda's mistake, and and trying. And of course, the government is not gonna let this slide, as the Avengers are having a meeting, not for superheroes to be registered, but for because of the incident of Age of Ultron, that they managed to save everyone with less casualties, as the government doesn't want every hero to register with the government, but instead for people with extraordinary ability, basically kids, as they are starting to pop up all over the world, as Agent Ross, known to hunt down Hulk, now has a new focus because Banner has literally disappeared on the face of the earth, and the only one seems to know his location seems to be Black Widow, as she refused to let her friend know location again, forcing her to do something quite drastic, as he is planning on capturing every young heroes to the government and forcing the whole Avengers to do something about it, as ultimately it's shown there's already conflict, as Captain America, known as and Stark, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark are having a huge conversation, and Tony is beginning to realize that Ben is becoming right because of their action. It affected the world negatively, and they need someone to keep on them in check. But unfortunately, that's when Steve Rogers doesn't like the idea, because he just went through the events of Hydra second coming. And luckily, he shut it down. But he also wants everyone to have freedom and the right, but not forcibly. And this is where the two begin a huge argument. The pretty much leaving the table as unfortunately for Steve Rogers is preoccupied with another individual that he's trying to locate that he thought was his dead friend Bucky, known as the Winter Soldier, and he's been cited lately in a near important worldwide country where a certain country known as the Wakanda as the leader of Wakanda seems to be attacked by the Winter Soldier. And it's up to Steve Rogers to check this out as his responsibility is to help his dearest friend out. For the last year or so, as Max and Texas has been seemingly working together in the background while Max has finally realized that Earth might be in a big trouble ever since the events of Age of Ultron and knowing a threat that could be hunting down Ben and not to mention the rest of the Infinity Stone. And because of this, as Max with the help of Textures are rebuilding back the plumbers, it took a long time for both of them to get everything back to work, but they managed to old get some of Max's old partners help to get upstarted in the Palmer's base back on Earth. But it's a slow process that it's not in full production, but luckily they managed to have some sort of base and a captivity to keep an eye on Kevin with a power hip collar preventing him from using his ability while in prison. And after a while, Max has heard from the government trying to put a program on superhuman to register in the government so that the events like people like Kevin, Scarlet, and Quicksilver being a threat to the whole world wouldn't be a problem. But Gwen is quite against this because she knows for a fact that Kevin is a bad person, but not a full-on villain compared to the likes of Loki and Ultron, as she has kept an eye on Kevin and generally thinks that Kevin is actually trying to change. While on the other hand, Ben is feeling different because he still remembers, even if Kevin was his mutated form, as Kevin was committed to pretty much ruin his life, and not to mention Gwen that almost killed his cousin. And because of this, Ben is not even against the idea of people like Kevin should be registered, as this begins the two cousins to an argument. But this isn't for childish things, but a much more darker, to the point where the two almost begin to fight about Kevin's situation, but luckily in the presence of Grandpa Max pretty much stopping the two of them from fighting. And after a long perhaps of time as the things happen closely back like in the original in the Civil War, as Captain America and Iron Man are recruiting a few of their allies to either stop Bucky or Captain is trying to chase the man who is responsible on killing the king of Wakanda. And it played out closer to the movie as Captain America at first wanted to recruit Ben in the fight, but unfortunately, as Ben Myers Captain America, in fact his biggest hero, he just can't get behind the idea that people like Kevin should not be free and they should be in the government's watch after that. But luckily, to Ben's utter annoyance, as Ben pretty much volunteered to join Captain, as Ben feeling that his cousin make a mistake, as Ben tries to transform as Ben has transformed one of his aliens Diamond Head to make sure Gwen or Cap doesn't get out of the situation, but unfortunately Captain Man didn't come alone. With a surprise help with Hawkeye and Wanda managed to restrain the 15-year-old Ben to the point where they managed to knock him out in his alien form. And after a good while, as Ben finally wakes up, seeing that they managed to get away, as Ben doesn't like the idea but has no other choice as he actually looks what just happened and realizes that Kevin has escaped. As Ben has a strange feeling that Gwen is the reason that Kevin is let free, and wanting to stop his cousin from making a huge mistake, as Ben has to swallow and be decided and decides to call Tony. And after once Captain America and his team approaching the jet they need to get to, but unfortunately they get stopped by Iron Man and his team with the help of Ben 10. While Captain America's side has Gwen and Kevin, an unexpected alliances. As the two heroes begin a huge fight, everything played the same until a certain point when Ben has to not only face Gwen but also Kevin, and Kevin isn't relying on the alien transformation but using the materials to transform most of his body into materials like metal and concrete against Ben, who transformed into his more flexible transformation forearm to do some serious damage to the both of them. But even though Ben has becoming more knowledgeable with his watch, unfortunately, he can't overcome the both combination of Gwen and Kevin, as Kevin is doing the dealing forearms foot on as Gwen is in the back line trying to cover Kevin's blind side and ultimately aid him until a web head crawler managed to help forearms as Spider-Man managed to restrain Gwen to the point where Forearm managed to overpower Kevin and managed to simultaneously knock him out but not fully as Gwen managed to grab Kevin and pretty much get out of there as Forearms and Spider-Man are beginning to have a friendly friendship as soon as they fight. And in fact, Forearms even likes this weird guy after suggesting trying to topple over Ant-Man in his giant form. But after a serious moment where Vision almost pretty much kill War Machine, and after that event, as Captain America had enough time to get out of there. But unfortunately, there's one thing they did not expect, as Ben not wanting to let Kevin out of his sight and not danger anyone again, because Gwen and Kevin has hopped on to Captain America's space shuttle and transforms into one of his top flyers as he transforms into Stingray trying to catch up. But after when Captain and Bucky, Iron Man, and Gwen and Kevin and Ben that has been hiding away, waiting for an opportunity to attack them until Baron Zemo has revealed himself and revealed about everything about Bucky's history and revealed that he is the one that is responsible on Tony's parent and feeling very responsible for his parents as Bucky tried to apologize as Tony didn't acknowledge Bucky but to Captain and simply asked did you know and Captain America Steve Rogers didn't want to answer as this begins a huge fight but unfortunately for Iron Man this is basically a 1 versus 4 but luckily unexpectedly Ben has jumped in to basically give Iron Man some backup as Ben transforms into his more newest alien into feedback and where even though it's a 2 versus 4 it's shown very a one-sided fight between Iron Man and feedback and as Iron Man Bucky Gwen and Kevin managed to greatly overpower the two until feedback and Iron Man I had to step up to the point where Iron Man is on an overdrive and pretty almost on a solo fight against Steve Rogers as feedback has no other choice but to use his true powers by absorbing the electrical current that is in the hidden base and not to mention absorbing magic from Gwen and boosting its power tremendously to the point where feedback managed absorb all the energy that Kevin has absorbed back to his human form and overpower Bucky. But unfortunately, as even though Captain America is getting his handed to him, but Iron Man remembers that Steve Rogers is a man that is built to never back down from a fight. As Steve Rogers managed to pummel Iron Man to the point where he could have easily killed Iron Man, but luckily he managed to stop himself, realizing Baron Zemo's mission is to ruin the greatest hero, and it's working. And Captain America didn't want to continue fighting as he just wanted to walk away until Iron Man shouted that that's still my father's, and Steve Rogers just simply looks at his Ultra and just simply tosses his shit away, ultimately walking away. And switching another perspective, as feedback is really also had is pummeling Kevin away, and I have to mention he's still feeling threatened against Kevin until Kevin finally spoke up and really gave it to Ben as Kevin says, fine, if you want to kill me, do it. Don't try to hide the fact that you always hated me ever since I tried to kill you and your family. Well, guess what? I apologize for everything I did. I tried to fix the wrong. All I did, but you can't go go through the fact that like I'm willing to change my view of things while you can't, and you can't stop thinking that I will be always be a threat. Well, prove as feedback is about to launch all the electricity that he's been storing up, as Kevin isn't scared one bit and just simply do it. Prove how right I am. Until feedback realizes as Gwen looking pretty hurt just looks against his cousin and just says, and pretty much beg, please don't do it. As feedback realizing what he's about to do essentially and simply backs off and pretty much disappear, perhaps never to be seen again. Unfortunately, there is one image visual that has been floating around Earth's surfaces as Vilgax has been notified by his drone that the Omnitrix has have activated its self-destruct mode, and once Vilgax has received this information, as this forces him to accelerate his plan, thinking he could just invade out. However, he's going to hasten his plan as Vilgax has finally managed to recover into his more powerful cyborg form. As Vilgax, just like in the episode where Vilgax gets Ben's attention by sending his drone to destroy the city, and Ben not want to ignore the fact that these things drones are attacking the city, as Grandpa Max wants to stop him, but unfortunately, as Ben has to transform into Heat Blast and quickly shots forward, and it played out very close in the original where Hitler managed to fight off against the drone. But unfortunately, as Ben has entered Vergra's his trap as he managed to get the Omnitrix user to come out of hiding, as Vergas pretty much begins to pummel away and forcing Hiplas to transform back to human form, as Vergas has finally has the Omnitrix in his hand, and it pretty much played very close in the original as Ben desperately tries to fight back, but unfortunately it seems to be a struggle getting off of Vergax's hand, as even if Ben could transform, as he tempted to transform into Cannonball, but unfortunately, as Cannonball, he simply gets overpowered by Vergax. But luckily, Grandpa Max Hope as is been there launching the same weaponry that it could hurt Vergax, but unfortunately once Vilgax took the damage, but unfortunately just quickly recovered as Vilgax pretty much remember the last time they fought, as Max has no other way but to had to think of something else besides using the same weapon that defeated Vilgax. But luckily, Max managed to grab Ben into the RV and pretty much gets away, as this unfortunately doesn't stop Vilgax, but unfortunately does get attacked by a few plumbers that is as Tech is the one leading the force, as Vilgax finally lands his sights on Tech as he finally meets the bounty hunter that pretty much betrayed him, as they begin a huge fight between them, as unfortunately as Ben not wanting to see Tech any hurt, as Ben has knowledge just about to transform into Xara and quickly charges in trying to stop Vilgax, but unfortunately as Vilgax pummels away the promised Tecrax and Xara, which but unfortunately as Ben begins to rapidly transform into alien trying to stop Vilgax, but unfortunately this overuse has short-circuited the army to the point where it sends a powerful shockwave that sends everyone flying and forcing Ben to transform back as Ben desperately tries to transform back, but unfortunately it's a bit too saber, leaving the plumber's tech threats, including Rapper Max, to be down for now, as well. Grex managed to recover and is about to take Ben forever, but luckily as Ben's cousin Gwen managed to stop Virgo with her magic, and not just that, as Ben came along absorbing the material and creating a huge fist planting against Vilgax, send him flying as they manage to buy some time, but unfortunately they don't have time for that, as Dexter is the one telling everyone they need to take Ben to the curator because he isn't sure how much the Omnitrix could keep on holding the self-destruct, as they manage not only get into Texas' vehicle but manage to get away. That serious of whiplash as facing Vegas, not to mention Ben's situation, has forced them to get out from the space orbit from the Earth's solar system and quickly reach to the Milky Way with a hyperdrive, as Ben realizes that he's going to stay a bit with his arch nemesis Kevin Lemon, but remembering what his friend told him he needs to give people a chance. But unfortunately, because that Ben has used the Omnitrix way more in the movie, as this makes Ben using the Omnitrix much more unstable to do so, as they manage to get to a place called Nowhere, as they try to find the last location from the curator, but accidentally stumbles across Mayax. Luckily, as Ben is being much more careful of using the Omnitrix, as they don't need to hurriedly rush away from the planet nowhere, as the members aren't alerted from Ben, but unfortunately this does lead for Vertrax to come there and reiterate everyone, and knowing exactly where he is going to find the Tennyson, as not just that, he meets an old friend known as 66, and after 66 pretty much is yelling at Vilgax for not paying him, but Vilgax simply shrugs away because he doesn't pay useless bounty hunters, as 66 and Vilgax begin a fight, which causes the criminals to help 66 as they remember what Vilgax did to the home planet, but unfortunately, as Vilgax just simply puts down everyone, including 66, to the point where Vilgax could easily kill him, but decided not to, and decided that 66 deserves a second chance, and not to mention the criminal's freedom, as if they get the Omnitrix to him, they will gain their freedom out of this place, which leads to our heroes to go to the planet where the creator used to hold, as they manage to get in a much more safer landing. But unfortunately, the awkward war is more let's just say more tenant, because the fact that Ben and Gwen haven't even talked for the longest time, leading to another argument, which kind of forces the species known as wild vines as they begin to attack the group, as Gwen, just like in canon, couldn't avoid them, and beginning gets to capture them, as this forces Ben to transform to one of his stronger transformational forms, and desperately tries to get his cousin free, but unfortunately, as Tech has managed to calm Ben down, but unfortunately, as before obviously is begin to yell at himself he that it should have been him, but luckily as Max is still with his grandson next to him, as Grandpa is just as devastated as his grandson, but he doesn't want to let Gwen sacrifice that. Remember, it's not Ben's fault. She's the one who wanted to come along, and she wanted to help Ben against Vilgax, and not wanting Gwen's sacrifice in vain. As the group still continues on in a door, and Ben not wanting to give up that easy, especially when the creator didn't want to fix the Omnitrix, forcing Ben to transforming into feedback and pretty much manipulate the door. And once he sets up on the creator as feedback still holding a lot of rage, sends out electric spark to the creator, but luckily he seems to be in a suit, revealing to be the real creator known as a Gelfman. As the same conversation begins, as Velgas has finally reached the creator, forcing everyone to defend them, just like in canon, as this time Max is along with Sidon, but unfortunately, even though Max is the greatest plumber, isn't matched against Vilgax's larger army, as Ben, not wanting giving up, putting on a alien device as he tries to shoot down the alien, and Kevin absorbing the materials around him, wanting for some payback, especially since his friend Gwen has been taken away from him. But just like in canon, as Gwen hasn't actually gone away and is actually saved by Pluto, that has been secretly put his small self in Gwen managed to save her. As the fight begins, as Vega reveals himself that he will work at the Omnitrix, but unfortunately, as Asman is amazed that Ben is still fighting, regard even in the dire situation, as Asman decides to take off the Omnitrix's core and put it back in, manage to pretty much turn off the self-destruct. But then Asmas begins unlocking a new transformation into way big, as Ben is transforming to his significant larger and more strongest transformation that he has ever been at, and pretty much played as Kellen as way big, pretty much wiped the floor with the army and managed to send Vilgax off flying. And because of that, as Smith decided that Ben is allowed to keep the Omnitrix, but also warned that the Earth is in great danger because he has been studying the universe itself, and he knows for that the universe itself isn't going to destroy itself. It's one individual that's kinda scaring him ever since, because the name of Thanos has been trying to collect the Infinity Stone so that he could wipe out all life of the universe, leaving everyone to taking it back as Mem is beginning to live with my ex. As Ben looks upon everyone saying how sorry he is why he put them, but he's ultimately grateful for everything they did for him. As Gwen and Kevin with Ben decided they're going to stop this Thanos guy. Not only that, they managed, as Max calls upon some help, as the nearest plumbers managed to get the Crummers back to prison, and not to mention they sent a special team known as the Guardians of the Galaxy to track down Vilgax, knowing that Vilgax is still out there. And this is where we're gonna end the episode there. I hope you guys enjoy this series for the one and final part of in Endgame. Until next time. keep it busy.